What a beautiful morning, by the way, guys. It's really beautiful here. Cool morning, wintertime. Of course, our winters in Thailand are not like the winters in the Ukraine. It's none of that white stuff. So, both Eric and Chris were asking about literature concerning Anapanasati. Eric, go ahead and ask your question again.
Yeah, I've been reading Buddhadasa's A Manual for Serious Beginners for a while now, and I can't seem to get past step 2 or 3, which is cool and concentrated eyes. It just recommends to follow the breath up and down and focusing your gaze on the nose, on the tip of the nose, and but yeah, I try to complete that or feel like I have a good grasp on that, but I don't feel like I'm making much progress.
All
Uh,
right. You
yeah.
probably won't be making much progress. Um, this is one place of very few. In fact, I don't know of any others that I have where I disagree with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And that, well, in the general sense, that Anapanasati should not be taught in the order that it is appearing in the Anapanasati Sutta, because there the order of the sutta is not chronological, rather it's elemental. So it follows the order of the elements of hard, liquid, uh, temperature and fire, and then air. And along with that, uh, the suttas do not ever mention the nose tip. That's kind of a holdover from the time when Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was really into the Visuddhimagga, but he left that out. Let us say he left off with the Visuddhimagga, but he kept with a few details. Now, actually, in the Pali, it doesn't even talk about nose ever. What it talks about is cave. A cave.
Mhm.
Well, if you've got a cave inside of you with an entrance to the cave, wouldn't the entrance to the cave be the nose? And then the passage down into the cave would be the throat, but the actual cave itself would then be in the chest. Is that not correct?
Correct.
All right. If you can understand that and get away from nose tip, that in fact there is a reason for the nose tip, but it's not for beginners. That in fact it is for, in reality, it's for the higher jhanas, specifically the second and the third jhana, that we don't need, because the Buddha has made it very, very clear, especially in Sutta number 36, to where the first jhana is the path to enlightenment. And you can see that really easily in the sense that sukha is the opposite of dukkha. So if you could get yourself into a state of satisfaction, that's all the Buddha teaches, is being in a state of satisfaction right now, and right now, and right now, right on through. All right. And yet no one spends much time ever, those who can practice it, even let us say those who become experts at second jhana, don't spend much time there. Where we want to spend our time is in a state of satisfaction that's associated with the first jhana. So let's now look at this, the 7 factors of enlightenment, because the Sambhojana, and by the way, this Sam means 7. Sambhojana, to where other places of Sam Basically, it depends upon whether there is a dot under the M or not, and I don't know enough about Pali to know the difference in the pronunciation between an M with a dot and an M without a dot under it. So, the Sambojana actually means 7. Bo is awakening, and Janga here actually means the factors of it. And so in the Sambojana, it goes in the order of, and I'll use the word first and describe it, unremitting sati, which means then is that you keep coming back to sati over and over and over and over again. And with that, unremitting sati, when you have sati, you will have then, with unremitting sati, you will have unremitting investigation of the mind states. Now, this is very specifically unremitting investigation of the mind states means keep track of what attitude you have. Do you have a loser's attitude or a winner's attitude? Because your attitude will form what kind of thoughts you have. For instance, if you were a boxer and you lost the game, you're going to have different thoughts after the game than the guy who won the game. And so if we can keep track moment by moment, unremitting mindfulness leading to unremitting investigation of the mind states, that will then give us the energy, because we practice enough of right noble effort, leads then to becoming energetic, because we're taking the right noble effort, and right noble effort is easy. Well, if you think about it for just a second, you can see that the 7 factors of enlightenment is in fact the Eightfold Noble Path itself, except that we're looking at it from 2 different angles. The first angle is Eightfold Noble Path is that which we learn to practice, and the 7 factors of enlightenment means after you have practiced very well, you have then developed these same factors that bring about the enlightenment or the release. So the Eightfold Noble Path is for the beginners, and the Sambojana is for those who have practiced correctly. In that regard, we can see that in fact the sequence that the Buddha talks about, the 7 factors of enlightenment in the Anapanasati Sutta, and by the way, other places, including this, it's in the Satipatthana Sutta, 3 or 4 other places. If you can see that the 7 factors of enlightenment then is the chronological that in fact matches identically to the chronological order of the Eightfold Noble Path. To remember, to look, and to make a change. All right? So this actually then fits in with the Anapanasati Sutta specifically, in the sense of item number 9, again, is investigation of the mind states, followed by item number 10, and I'm hoping that I can continue to remember to call them items rather than steps, because if we use the word step, people will get all chronological again. So let's not get chronological and just see them as items on a list. For instance, a to-do list. Have anybody ever made a to-do list? Okay. If you do a to-do list, don't you put the big important items kind of first? Which means then the to-do list generally is not done chronological, because we normally do the easy things first, and the important things we wait until we're dead. All right, so this is the issue about you can see then that the Anapanasati Sutta is very much like a to-do list, but it's not at all in chronological order. And that's a major mistake that almost all Western Buddhists make, and that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa certainly knew that, but he teaches in that book, Anapanasati, a manual for serious beginners, he teaches it in the item order of the Satipatthana, because he probably would get in trouble with some of the old Thai scholars for doing it in chronological order, so he does it in the order of the elements instead. So does anybody have any questions about this? Because you're not going to make any progress along the path if you start thinking about nose tips, because the practice has nothing to do with your nose other than is it itching?
Yeah, well,
Pardon?
as I was practicing it, I was pairing that with feeling my whole body as if it were a fist. Like, yeah, imagining my tension in the whole body was like a clenching fist, and using the breath to keep track of that image
Uh-huh.
and then
Did you
relax it.
ever realize that you had the attitude that you want to clench your fist? And did you recognize that you had thoughts of clenching a fist? Okay, so that means then that we really need to start with what the mind is doing, and start with the attitudes that we have in the mind.
That's what I'm trying to get a grasp of.
Pardon?
That's what I'm trying to get a grasp of, like trying to feel that mind object for it to not be abstract.
Trying what? Not to be.
Like attitude might be a bit of an abstract concept. I want something that I can grasp so that I can mold it, change it.
All right. Right now, you have the attitude of a loser. You have the attitude of a victim. Oh, I'm trying to grasp. You don't have the attitude of a winner in the sense of, yeah, baby, I got that stuff. Can't you see the difference between the attitudes? That should not be hard to grasp. Normally, people have been raised in the attitude of a victim. We started off as an infant as a victim, needing to be taken care of. Then we were trained by our mommies, who were first class victims, to follow her and be a victim of her. And then we went to school and we became victims of the students, or the teachers rather, and then later victims of the bullies, and we stay victims our whole life. But it is not hard to grasp, but rather to begin to see that when you want help, when you're looking for an answer to some question, etc., that is done by the attitude of a victim. Because the attitude of a victim is the attitude of wanting something, needing something, trying to understand something. And the attitude of a winner is, I've got it. I don't need anything else. What I've got is enough. Yeehaw, we've got it. All right. So, can you begin to develop the attitude of, I've got it?
I guess.
Now, you can also see that this is exactly, I've got it, is satisfaction. And looking for the answer is dissatisfaction. We're out looking for something. We want something we don't have. That's dukkha. That's dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction then is built upon the basic attitude of things are not good enough. I'm not good enough. I need milk. I need help. I need my diapers changed. I need to learn to read. I need. And we spend our whole lives in that state of need, which is a state of a victim's attitude. And we need to start practicing putting the mind into a state of, everything is okay. This is so easy. It's so profound, but it's so hard for people to grasp, especially when they're misled with books that are not in chronological order. So the first thing is to remember to look at your attitude. Look at the kind of thoughts that you have while you're having that attitude. If you have the attitude of, oh, I don't understand, that'll lead you to the conclusion that, oh, this is an attitude of a victim. Let me change that. How do we change that? We change it with, actually, it's stated right there in the Anapanasati Sutta, to gladden the mind or brighten the mind, which is another way of saying come out of the victim's attitude into the winner's attitude. And how can we do that? By having winner's thoughts. So can you have a winner's thought? Give me a winner's thought, Eric.
I'm okay right now.
All right. Give me a winner's attitude thought, Mikey.
Happy to be here.
All right, Santiago, give me a winner's attitude thought.
I'm chilling, chilling.
All right, Rachel, give me a winner's attitude thought.
I got everything I need.
All right, Christopher, give me a winner's attitude thought.
I can do this.
I can do this. Right. Okay. So these are the kind of thoughts that we need to have. This is the beginning of the practice, is to change our unwholesome thoughts, which are basically thoughts of needing and wanting, which are the victim's position, and start having wholesome, uplifting thoughts to brighten the mind, to gladden the mind. This is step one of Anapanasati. All right. If we do that, then here's one that very few people would mention. Let me give you one that's quite important. How about, I feel safe now? Is that a winner's thought? Right. I feel safe. Now, one of the points that we can understand is that all of victims' thoughts are based in fear, and all winners' thoughts are based either in hubris or in the state of safety. And so I feel safe, I'm okay. This is an important point. So we can gladden the mind by having thoughts of everything is okay, I am safe. Because if anything is not okay, it's dangerous. Is that not correct, Mikey? When things are not okay, there's somewhere danger in there. Santiago, when there is any danger in there, is there naturally a fear going to arise? Just subtly? Yeah, okay. So we have to take the danger out of it, and if we can feel safe and secure, the next one which comes in, and this is where the body kind of fits in, even though it's not in chronological order, the body comes in the sense of, are you comfortable in the body? Comfort. Okay, and I've seen a lot of people, in fact, the typical is that, oh, I'm doing the long breath and I get tired. Well, you're not doing the long breath correctly, because the long breath actually makes you feel comfortable and relaxed. And if you can become comfortable and relaxed, especially that word comfortable, now we're staying back into the definitions of sukha. Sukha has in the Pali Canon, the Pali dictionaries that I've read, it comes specifically feeling safe, secure, comfortable, and with safe, secure, and comfortable comes satisfaction. Can you be satisfied? This is good enough. Everything is okay. And we keep practicing that over and over and over and over again. Then, in fact, I mention this on every call. Mikey, you've been on so many calls. Is that not the same thing I keep teaching over and over and over again? And yet here you come, Eric, and all of these transcriptions that you've done, Chris, you come with, oh, but the first thing we do is the long breath. And what about the nose tip, right? That's not what the Buddha teaches. He teaches in the Anapanasati Sutta to look at what you're doing, to see what kind of mind state you have, gladden the mind, and by gladdening the mind, you then promote having the state of sukha come up. And the sukha actually not only is in the Anapanasati Sutta, but it is exactly the opposite of dukkha, where the Buddha says, both formerly and now, I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Well, dukkha nirodha actually then is sukha, or satisfaction, or safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. Now, another point is that sukha specifically is an item of the first jhana. And in fact, it's pretty clear that the entire Anapanasati Sutta is designed around getting someone in first jhana. That's why there would never be any mention of nose tips or caves or anything like that, is because the Anapanasati Sutta is all that you need to practice, if you're practicing it correctly, to get yourself into a state of sukha. Now, the next item that we can look at is that if we keep practicing this over and over and over again, then we develop confidence. The first time that you get into satisfaction, you can say, oh, wow, I've got it. Wait a minute. And then we'll have an unwholesome thought. All right. But when we can practice having wholesome thoughts over and over and over and over again, we begin to develop the confidence. I can do this. Now, I can do this is one thing, but I can do this is a little bit of a higher element. This is also referred to as the word piti, which is also part of the Anapanasati Sutta and also part of the first jhana, is that energetic, I can do this. Whoopee! Life is wonderful because I see it that way. So if we develop piti and sukha, basically piti is like the high, and then we come back to the sukha, which is just being quietly satisfied. These are elements of the first jhana. So if we can rearrange our looking at it, we can see I'll give them to you, is the first thing that we have to do to gain the first jhana is the removal of hindrances. Another way of stating it is to come out of our unwholesome thoughts, to come out of our victim's attitude into a winner's attitude. So that's the removal of the hindrances. The second item then would be sukha and piti. And then the fourth and the fifth items have to do with applying the mind. Well, if you're applying the mind to remove the hindrances and coming into a state of sukha, and then you sustain that over and over and over again, which means you're building confidence. So the first jhana is what the Anapanasati Sutta really is about. And that's basically all what the Buddha teaches. Can you do that? Can you apply the mind to get it into a wholesome state so that you feel safe, secure, comfortable, satisfied, and then successful? And you keep practicing that over and over and over again. What else do you want from the Buddha? What else do you want? Do you want some sort of pie in the sky enlightenment or some nibbana or something? I think that one of the big problems with the Western Buddhism is that it's been influenced by Christianity. All of you were raised in a Christian culture, which have these ideals way up in the sky that you're supposed to work and work and work for lives and lives and lives and then finally get it. Or if you can get the grace of God or something, he'll let you into heaven after you're dead or something. But really, all we have to do is practice this one little thing, and that is these 5 items of removing the hindrances, developing a state of sukha, continuing to develop into a state of whippy, and apply that and sustain it and keep going at it one after another after another. Now, I will bring in some analogies for this. The first analogy that I'll bring in is medicine. There are certain ailments that we can have, like a headache, and you would take an aspirin for the headache, and when the headache is relieved, you wouldn't take an aspirin again. However, if you have another headache the next day, you'd take another aspirin. Is that not correct, Eric?
Yeah, if you like aspirin.
All right, so let's look at more chronic ailments that people will have diabetic situation. Then the doctor would prescribe you take this particular medication 3 times a day. If the patient has high blood pressure, then the doctor will give him, you take this kind of pill 2 or 3 times a day. Is that not correct? And that the person who has diabetic or high blood pressure will take that high blood pressure medicine every day, over and over and over and over again, right? It's a condition. This is exactly what we have to do to practice Anapanasati on a regular basis. Today and tomorrow, because every unwholesome thought you have is a kind of a headache, and you need to take the aspirin for it. In our regard, the aspirin is, let's have some wholesome thoughts instead, over and over and over and over again, right? This is one thing that I keep trying to teach the students, to instill that you have to practice gladdening your mind over and over and over and over again. What kind of breath you have is not so important, other than the kind of breath that you would have that would help you to relax. That's the kind of breath that you need, is the kind of breath that relaxes. A long, easy breath is not hyperventilating, or if we do hyperventilate, we don't do it for more than about 2 minutes or so, because the whole point is just to get the body relaxed. If you were uptight all the time in the body and you went to the doctor and he gave you some pills, saying you take these pills every day so that you can relax your body, if you stop taking those pills, will you get uptight again?
Sure.
Yeah, so we need to continue to take the medicine. All right, so that's the first analogy about medicine. That's the way that it is. If the psychiatrist gives you an antidepressant, take that antidepressant every day, every day, every day, because the likelihood of the depression coming back is very high. Though I would not recommend antidepressant medications, I would recommend antidepressant thoughts, because it's our thoughts and our attitude that causes depression. And medication is not going to do it for us if you don't take the right kind of medication. And likelihood is that the psychiatrist doesn't know anything about right noble thoughts. So the second analogy that I'll use would be like an airplane. How many of you have ever seen an airplane fly that has no maintenance? Occasionally somebody will own an airplane and they don't maintain it. They keep flying it, and pretty soon what's going to happen, Santiago? It's going to crash, exactly. Right? How many times have you crashed? Well, it's because you're not doing the maintenance on it. Now, When I was an engineer for IBM, I learned that there are two kinds of maintenance. One is called corrective maintenance, which means if the thing is broken, you got to fix it. And the other one, which we spent most of our time on, was preventive maintenance. An example of that is changing the oil on the car. If you change the oil on a regular basis, that's preventive maintenance. But if you don't change the oil and the oil gets low, the engine goes bad. Now you're going to have to perform corrective maintenance. And believe me, 4 quarts of oil is a lot cheaper than doing a new engine. So what I'm recommending here is to start looking at this practice in the sense of preventive maintenance. That every time a commercial airliner goes into the air, when it comes back on the ground, what do they do with it? Don't they perform PM, preventive maintenance? Don't they put gas in it? Don't they check the air in the tires? Don't they make sure that the flaps are working? Don't they look at the engine? Every time the airplane flies, they do preventive maintenance on it. And when they find something wrong that needs corrective maintenance, they'll take that plane out of service so that they can perform the corrective maintenance. Well, we can think then that maybe doing a retreat, a meditation retreat, is like corrective maintenance. But every time you go out, you need to perform preventive maintenance before you go out. Otherwise, what's going to happen with your day, Santiago?
It's gonna go to shit.
Yeah. So, if you can take these two analogies of taking your medicine on a regular basis, which is the same thing as performing preventive maintenance on an aircraft or a car, if you perform the maintenance over and over and over again every time the aircraft is used, then the likelihood of you crash landing is very low. Is this not correct? Santiago, what do you think?
I think so. I think if you treat it nicely, it will do you fair.
Mm-hmm. And so giving yourself a lube job would be like being kind to yourself instead of being critical. That in fact, every time we're critical of ourselves, that's like a crash landing. Everybody here, I suppose, has to put up with criticism. Have you ever lived your whole life so far without ever being criticized, Eric?
Of course not.
How about, do you criticize yourself? I mean, you learned how to criticize when you were a child, and so now many of our thoughts are critical thoughts. We're critical of ourselves. We're not good enough. So these critical thoughts are basically unwholesome thoughts. They're basically hindering us from being in a state of being okay. So that means then that we need to give ourselves a lube job, which is another way of saying, let's be kind to ourselves rather than critical. Now, an example of that would be, oh, I should have been meditating. Maybe we sit down and we're taking a few deep breaths and having a happy thought, and then all of a sudden the mind wanders away. And when we see the mind wandering away, we get critical of the mind. That in fact, where it wandered was probably into critical thought. So when we see that we're critical with ourselves, what do? We just continue being critical. We're already on a roll here. It takes right noble effort to come out of that criticism intentionally and give ourselves nurturing, to become friends. You don't like it when other people criticize you, but if you're critical of yourself, that means you don't like yourself very much. And also, if you're critical yourself, more than likely, you're going to be critical of others. I mean, you're already in the habit of being critical. Why not spew it around? Become critical of other people. Let's be critical of Donald Trump. Let's be critical of Putin. Let's get really critical. And now we have a whole society that's full of critical thinking. So what we have to do is to change that around from intentionally being critical into intentionally being nurturing. So let's paint a situation to where the sister and brother-in-law have invited one out to lunch, out to supper, and then sister begins to criticize. And now we don't like it. I don't want to go out with sister because when we're out to lunch or out to supper, she criticizes. I mean, they pay for it, so that they've actually paid for the right of hammering on me, right? And we'll take the free food, but we don't like to be criticized. But what if we would say instead something to sister like, "That's very insightful of you. Thank you for mentioning that. Wow, I really enjoy that you tell me what needs to be done." In other words, you begin to nurture her and nurture yourself rather than getting all ticked off because she's criticizing you. Could you remember to do that? Santiago, what do you think about that one? And yet you've been out criticized. And how many times do we say to the person who's criticizing us, "Oh, well, thank you very much. That's a really interesting point that you're bringing up." Oh, no. We say, "Aha, touche. You criticize me. Listen to what I have to say about you." And off we go into no friendship at all. We're beginning to create enemies. So, this is an important point that we need to start nurturing ourselves even when we're in wrongdoing. Even if you screw up and screw up badly, can you just get over it? Or can you nurture yourself, or do you have to be critical of yourself? Now, another example would be that the guy is saying, "Okay, I'm going to practice Anapanasati. Everything is okay. Well, except for this and except for that." All right. So we have one wholesome thought followed by an unwholesome thought, and we don't even see that. Where's our mindfulness gone? We have one wholesome thought followed by maybe a whole string of unwholesome thoughts. Maybe some of them are even critical. "Oh, this Anapanasati, it don't work." Well, saying Anapanasati don't work is not practicing Anapanasati. We have to actually practice Anapanasati, which means practice having wholesome thoughts. And if we have wholesome thoughts like everything is okay, no problems, no worries, I'm not afraid, even when sister criticizes, that's okay, because she can't talk, she doesn't even know who I am anyway. What she's criticizing is probably the younger brother in diapers that she hated years ago. And she's just gotten into a habit of criticizing the poor kid, even though he's 40 years old now or 60. So she's developed a habit, and that we have uh, developed and kept our own habit of, "Oh, I don't like it when sister criticizes." Can we take that time? Can we practice well enough in seclusion so that when sister criticizes us, we can have sati right then? Can we remember that I don't have to feel bad because sister is criticizing? I can come out of my criticism and nurture her and nurture myself right now. Back to that airplane. Can you perform the preventive maintenance? Can you perform the corrective maintenance right then and there? Can you take your medication right then and there? Oh, my sister just gave me a headache. Wait a minute, let me pop this pill called happiness. So, if we can practice this way, that's Anapanasati. And yet many people like Eric get stuck on the first chapter of the book. And I would highly recommend that you go to, you know that it's in 4 stages. I would highly recommend that you start with stage 3 of gladdening the mind, looking at the mind. That's where we need to actually start our practice rather than starting with the breath. That we sort of add the breath as a side dish rather than making it our main meal that's hard to eat. Does that make sense, Eric?
It's making sense right now.
Hello, Vinny. What do you have to say?
Hey, Dhammarato. Phenomenal chat today. I'm loving it. It's amazing. I agree 100% with you. I think anything that gladdens the mind is a great process. 100%. Brilliant talk today. I'm glad I joined the call. Thank you.
All right.
I'm gladdened. My mind is currently gladdened right now. So thank you, Dhammarato. You've done a great job.
Well, all I am is just repeating the same old stuff over and over and over again, just as happily as before. Let's try something new. Guys, I've told you this so many times. I want you to practice. You do it what I tell you to do, you're going to be miserable for the rest of your lives. I can't even do that with a straight face. But that's the way that Anapanasati seems to be taught. And in fact, that's kind of the style of Goenka. When he says, you got to work. You got to work. And so there is something that needs to be changed around. We need to put that lubrication in there. We need to take the good pills to give us the right noble view that everything is okay, to have the right attitude, that everything is just fine, not a problem in the world. We have to practice that because you're already, Vinny, very, very skilled at having unwholesome thoughts. You're very skilled at having a victim's attitude of needing something instead of already having the attitude that everything is all right. I don't need anything. Right now is good. Rachel, what do you have to say?
Well, practice has been going well. Thanks everyone for being here and listening with me. I don't have much to say beyond that. I'm good.
All right. Okay. Well, at least what I'm saying is not too controversial, because if it was controversial, then you would argue with me. Christopher, do you have something to say here? Your mic is muted and so is your video. So, anyway, I'm ready to start repeating myself happily. And that would, repetition would then be back to that airplane that needs preventive maintenance. Every time you go out, you need to be ready to go out by performing the proper maintenance. The Buddha was very big on seclusion. And you can think of him going into seclusion as like the airplane going into the hangar to get all gussied up. to get all the preventive maintenance done, to make sure everything is working correctly. So this is something that we need to practice on a regular basis, is to stop flying around so much and get into seclusion and do some PM. Practice, practice, practice. And so the PM, the preventive maintenance, is what we call practice. Practice having wholesome thoughts. Practice gladdening the mind. Practice changing our attitude to a winner's attitude. To practice having that joy. Wow, everything is really okay. Samantha, do you have something to say?
No, I don't really have anything to say. I really wanted to join and ended up listening while working.
I'm glad you're here. Really glad that you're here. Go ahead.
Oh, this is good to see you all. That's all.
Let's see, 46, somebody. David, you were behind the label there. I had to turn the label off. David, do you have something to say? David Ogg. Nope. So do you have any more to say, Santiago?
I'm satisfied.
You're satisfied. All right. All right. Dhammadas, how about you?
I'm just feeling very good right now.
Ah, what a relief it is. Rachel, do you have any more to say?
Well, if you want to be good at something, you got to practice.
Yeah.
It's
And
been,
if you want to be good at being happy, you have to practice happily.
don't just practice happily.
Ivan, do you have something to say?
Not for now, just practicing.
All right. Well, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home? Do you have anything to say personally, too? Not
Sure. I'll say that, yeah, it's worthwhile, especially for beginners, to start with gladdening the mind when doing Anapanasati. That being said, can play with starting whichever step you want to when you sit down. Eric, for example, if you do want to play with starting with experiencing the body of the breath before gladdening the mind, that's okay too. But one thing that I'll add there is that what I've found so beneficial in the way Dhammarato teaches it, by usually starting with gladdening the mind first, is that gets rid of a lot of those unwholesome thoughts that are keeping us from experiencing the body of the breath. If your mind is full of unwholesome thoughts, there's not much experiencing going on there. You're just being distracted by the unwholesome instead. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add on that.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Michael.
And yeah, it's been really, really nice seeing so many happy, smiling friends today. And thank you all for being here. And go ahead and visit opensanghafoundation.org. We've been really happy to see more and more activity there every day. I'm always getting emails now of new people leaving comments and likes, and seeing people join, and adding friends, and Yeah, there's a lot of,
posting.
a lot of new activity, and I'd really encourage people to really play around with the site, really just click around. It's not the type of website that you're going to be able to see everything in 30 seconds.
Oh, it's a huge website. It's got so much to it. It's got videos and it's got audio and it's got, in fact, a whole section from Christopher of all the transcriptions that he's done. Thank you so much for that, Christopher. You've done a marvelous job. It's getting
Yeah.
better, too.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Christopher's transcriptions, definitely give those a read. They also do, he's been adding summaries as well. So if some of these concepts you haven't been understanding so well, can go ahead and read over them again. But yeah, go check out the website and keep coming to these calls and have a good one, everyone.
One thing that I would like to mention is we've been doing all of this communications on Skype, but Skype doesn't send out emails. I would prefer that if you start wanting to post on Skype, that you either, in fact, I would like it if you did both, that you could put it on the group in the groups in the Open Sangha Foundation and on Skype for a while. But right now we're kind of in the transition of moving off of Skype onto the website. So
Yeah, you can also message me on Open Sangha Foundation and Dhammarato and other friends as well. I actually haven't been getting notifications that well on Skype lately, so if people message me on Open Sangha Foundation, though, I always get those. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to say before we finish?
Thank you so much for the words and for your examples. I was also glad to see all the smiling faces, and I feel inspired.
Great. Thank you, Christopher, for your work. And thank you, Dhammadas, for your work also. We've got, and I should make a special thank you to Mikey. So we've got 3 volunteers that are here that are doing a lot of the work of Open Sangha Foundation. And if you have a bit of time, talk to Mikey about what work you can do this over and above just playing around. If you actually want to volunteer some time, I guess
No, we're
something's
still
done.
just playing around on the volunteer level too.
Yeah, we play around on the volunteer level also. All right, well, thank you all so much. We'll see you.
Thank you. See you, everyone.